What's cooling? What's going on? We have the Senior Bowl. That's what's going on. But man, it was a good start. Good day one practice for the national team. And that's what we're going to recap right now is talk about the national practice. We're going to have the American practice coming up here soon. I'm going to try to catch that here before it starts. But this is going to be a recap of the national team's day one practice. Let's go down the list. Let's start off with the DBs here. I got my notes below me, so if I'm going to be looking a little down, pardon me on that. But Azareye'h Thomas, cornerback. Unfortunately, he did get beat by Tez Johnson in both of his reps. He looked okay out there in general in the practices. He did kind of get beat by Jaden Higgins on a little out route. Higgins ended up dropping that pass. A little bit of a disappointment from Azareye'h Thomas, a guy that I was really liking going into this Senior Bowl practices and whatnot to do to keep an eye out on. Still very early, and I imagine he can recover and bounce back. But so far, a little bit of a drop from me. Sebastian Castro did have a bit of a missed coverage. I did see out there. I didn't see really anything too crazy with the hips. Looked a little slow at times in and out of his foot pedal. But you got Quincy Riley, who really stole the show. One of the great DBs here at practices. Played immensely dominant. Really was good from top to bottom. He had a couple of really, really nice reps. One versus Higgins there. He shut him down on a vertical route. Was very patient there at the end on the one-on-ones at the end, the highlighting of the practice. In general, looked really, really good. Going against Jalen Noel, too. He had both of his reps in the one-on-one against Noel. Now, Noel did make the catches. However, he was tight coverage there. It was one on a slant and one on a vertical, I believe. So, yeah, he was tight coverage on both of them. Just one of them got to locate the football a little bit. Going down the list here, you got Tommy Hill. Looked a little bit sluggish in and out of his breaks and stuff. Like, I don't know, he just kind of looked a little stiff for me. And then we go on to Jalen Smith. Fine. I didn't see a whole ton that too much to knock at this point. And Justin Barron didn't see a ton of him or Maxine Hook. Didn't see a lot. Oh, Dorian Strong. Here's another riser from me. Really good reps. He only lost one rep and it was at the very end. And that one he lost on a vertical route. But besides, it was versus like Evan Williams, I believe. Let me check my notes on that real quick. It was Kyle Williams, pardon me, the Washington State wide receiver. Besides that, though, he played really, really well. Strong was very, very good on his one-on-one reps, basically shutting down the wide receiver every single time. And then we go down the list here. Darian Porter looked a little raw with his pedal. Didn't look comfortable in coverage. He lost all of his reps that I saw. He's got the traits you look for, so teams kind of knew that he was a raw prospect going into this. He's a traits-based prospect anyway. Trey Rucker, he had a good practice. I thought he looked pretty dang good. Had a nice rep, too, going against Elijah Arroyo, who basically he lost to the beginning of the rep, but he showed good recovery speed and ability to kind of break up the pass. It was kind of a drop from Arroyo. Arroyo has been a big-time standout. We'll talk about him in a minute. Anyway, Rucker, not too bad. Definitely a guy to keep an eye out on there. Wouldn't say he rose up or anything. Let's get to the D-line here. Landon Jackson, he looked a little rough. In the practices, the one-on-ones look stiff. So I need to see a little bit more of Jackson. I think he's going to end up moving to the inside more or less at the next level. Azareye'h was shut down by Anthony Belton, and he tried a spin move, was kind of shut down there. It's still early with Donovan Azareye'h. I still like him a lot, but I will say that I wasn't super impressed by the reps so far. Nothing crazy. Nothing that I'm going to drop him a ton, but at the same time, he's not rising up my board. Joshua Farmer was a nice disruptive presence. He just doesn't quite have the pass rush moves just yet. Like, he's very powerful. I like what I saw, the pop. But yes, he needs to put together some more pass rush moves for me to rise up the board. A lot of traits to work with. He definitely has some athleticism. Yahya Black showed some nice pop, some nice power. He's another guy where I just think maybe lacking some pass rush moves. Mike Green kind of got stonewalled for the most part of the practices thus far and just didn't see a whole ton of winning there just yet, but I still like Mike Green. He did win one off the edge, one-on-one versus Ozzie Tripolio, but it was just some speed. Still need to see more on Mike Green. It is once again very early. Hosea Stewart had a nice little power move there to the edge in one of them, and also in the practices I saw him kind of block shit. I believe it was on a tight end. He just kind of threw this tight end to the ground. Really nice rep there in the Senior Bowl. So far, Ja Joyner had a nice rep in the practice drills, was able to get some pressure on, I believe it was Tyler Shook. And then you got Ty Robinson. Nothing too much I saw from Robinson. Kind of got stonewalled for the most part. Jamari Caldwell showed some nice burst. He started off the one-on-ones with a clean rep and a clean win. So really impressive. Caldwell, I thought he was more of, like a nose guy or one tech going into this. No, he's got some pass rushing upside there with his quickness. I'll tell you that right now. I could see him really fitting in on like a 4-3 defense. It's like a one tech as a sneaky pass rusher for you. Let's see, Darius Rob Alexander had a nice win to the outside on one of his reps. Didn't see a whole ton of him, but he is definitely a guy I'm going to keep an eye out on as we continue to go about this. Junior Tolofa, sorry, I'm butchering that name, from Utah. Unfortunately, he got stonewalled throughout practice. Andres Pables, didn't like see as much as I would have liked from him either. It wasn't terrible, though. I thought he had a couple of nice reps. We go on to David Walker, some linebacker. He's in more of an edge rusher. He won one in the practice session of it. I saw him get to the backfield and make a nice play there. And then we got Nick Martin. I didn't really see a whole ton of him. Colin Oliver kind of got stoned on one rep as an edge rusher. Now, Jeffrey Bassa. Here's going to be a guy that we all talk about. He looked really good. He looked good in practices. He looked good on the one-on-one versus Donovan Edwards. He had a bit of a recovery there. Edwards beat him initially on and out, like a little going out and whatnot, but he recovered and he got back and really played that ball and was able to break up the pass. Edwards almost made the catch, but Bassa looked great in run support as well. A couple of great run stops there. Really, really impressive. And I think he could rise up into day two very easily. I mean, he might have already been in a day two conversation, but he looked really, really good. And then this UCLA cat that I still cannot pronounce his name, Oladejo. Pardon me, I know. Hey, even Daniel Jeremiah was trying to get around saying his name out on the broadcast, and for good reason. He started off with a really, really nice finesse win. Besides that, he kind of went a little quiet. He did lose one, lost one badly in the one-on-ones. Overall, definitely a guy I'm going to keep an eye out on. I think he's a late-round throw. Cody Lindenberg had a nice play in the practice session, had a good run stop there. Ozzy Tripolo, nothing too crazy with him. I thought he didn't play bad out there in the one-on-ones. At the same time, I wasn't super impressed or anything. Jalen Rivers looked good. Now, he did get beat in the practice session one time I saw him. Kind of lost on an inside move. But overall, in the one-on-ones, he was really good. Showed off some strong hands. Ursery, speaking of strong hands, Ursery looked great. Everybody he went, I believe, against Mike Green. He may have gone against Azareye'h. I'll have to check my matchups on that. But yeah, he looked really, really good, man, with his strong hands. He isn't the quickest guy to the edge, but he recovered. I knew he had one versus Hosea Stewart where he was able to make a nice recovery too with his hands. Belton, though, will be the talk of the town. Anthony Belton was so strong. He shut down everybody. He was the guy that shut down Donovan Azareye'h's spin. And I think he may have gone against Mike Green too, one rep or whatnot. But yeah, he looked great. Everybody he went against, he won, and he won in a major way. So if you're going to keep a guy out that's going to get a big-time riser here very soon, Anthony Belton, if he puts together a good day two practice, wouldn't shock me if he ends up getting a little bit of first-round buzz. He looked that good. He won every rep. He dominated. And then you got Zabel, another guy who dominated. It's going to get some first-round conversation as well. He looked good at center, looked good at guard. He showed strong hands, good lateral agility. His movement skills are really impressive. So Zabel, is going to be a guy that is easily in that back-end first-round conversation. Early day two, I would say he's locked in at this point, barring a bad practice tomorrow. Josh Connolly had some ups and downs. I thought he lost a couple of reps early on, but he looked good. He looked good in the practice session, and then the one-on-one at the end, he shut down the dude. Let's see, who was it that he shut down? Oh, it's the UCLA cat, Oladejo, how to pronounce his name. He shut him down big time, pancaked him there, and also looked good in the practice session too. He had a great pass pro rep. And then you got Marcus Bowe. He needs to get stronger. The athleticism's there. And that's kind of what we knew going that into this process with Bowe. Just needs to get stronger, but I still like him. Jonah Monheim looked excellent at center and just in the interior in general. He's a guy that I think earned a day two consideration, especially in a weak center class. I see him as one of the top centers at this point in the class. Caleb Rogers from Texas Tech actually looks pretty dang good as well. I was impressed with some of the reps that he showcased, some nice solid pop and hands and whatnot. So keep an eye out on him. He was good leverage too. He used really good anchor strength with him. Wyatt Millam looked fine. He did lose one rep on the outside versus, I believe it was Donovan Azareye'h who beat him towards the end of one-on-ones. Overall, that was at left tackle. Milam looks to be more of a guard at the next level, and he showed some good strength at that. Going to the quarterbacks now, Tyler Shough. Didn't see, and I saw a little bit of him. He had this little crafty maneuver to get around Landon Jackson. Not much passing-wise to really say too much there. Dillon Gabriel really showed the most to me in terms of passing. He had a couple of nice passes, couple of nice touch passes deep down the field. Overall, looked the smoothest out of all the quarterbacks, I would say. So I would say he had the best day out of every one of these quarterbacks. It was very limited in that regard. The Taylor, I can't pronounce his name. He looked rough. He's got a big arm, but he looked inaccurate, and he also looked a little slow with his decision making. On to the running backs now. Martinez, saw him in the practice. Didn't see too much there that I was like wowed about. Donovan Edwards had a nice couple of moves actually in the practice, and he had that early on win versus Bassa. Just couldn't quite finish. The route was the quarterback could have gotten that ball out a little quicker too. Ollie Gordon looks big, and I'll say that. He looks big and strong. Bashal Tootin looks like he got some speed, man. And you got, tight ends now. Let's move on to the tight end. Harold Fanning Jr. He did have a penalty in the practice session, so I do want to point that out. Besides that, I didn't really see a whole ton. He didn't really getting one-on-one reps or anything like that. You got Terrence Ferguson, who looked good. He looked good in practice. He looked good on the one-on-ones, had a really good clean beat there in the one-on-ones. Really like what he brings to the table. Elijah Arora is going to be the talk of the town here at the tight end room for the national team. He looked great. Had a vertical win, showed off that speed. He's got a little shimmy shake, too, on a little out route that he was able to pull there towards the end in the one-on-ones. So Aurora, he beat Jackson with a little subtle move there. And then we go on to the UCLA tight end, another guy that I'm having trouble pronouncing his name. He looked a little rough one-on-ones. He looked sluggish in his routes. On to the wide receivers to finish this up for the national team. Jaden Higgins had a down practice, in my opinion. Showed off size. He won early on a slant, but besides that, he really lost most of his reps. He had a drop, too, in versus Azareye'h Thomas in the practice. Overall, I want to see more. Jaden Higgins going to have a better day tomorrow. Jalen Knoll, he looked solid. He got both of his catches there in the one-on-ones versus Quincy Riley. But, yeah, I wouldn't say he did anything like blow me out of the water. At the same time, like, he looked solid. You know what I mean? He sticks with where my grade's at, is like a late day 2, early day. Probably more of, for me, he's more of an early day 3 guy. Xavier Restrepo did have a couple of bad routes. One where I felt like he just kind of mistimed it there with the quarterback. Who knows? But nothing crazy with Restrepo. It's too early to say on Xavier Restrepo. However, the speed, I will say, is definitely Restrepo's going to be his biggest thing as we continue this forward. Tez Johnson looked great versus Azareye'h Thomas, but that's to be expected. A small guy versus a big corner, tall, lanky corner. Kind of knew that was going to happen. However, we needed to see it. And Johnson's threatened with saying he can run as fast as Xavier Worthy out there. So that's going to be something when we see at the combine. But Tez Johnson looked the part out there and yeah, really smooth with his route. And Jalen Lane, he looked good too. I like Lane, man. He went on a nice vertical route and he just looked good. He caught everything, man. He really did a catch in the practice. He won his one-on-one drills. So check mark there. Lane's got some speed. So I really like Jalen Lane so far too. Kyle Williams, as I talked about earlier, he was the one guy that beat Dorian Strong. Anyway, that's really going to recap so far of the national practice day 1s. Like I talked about, we'll get into the Americans when they finish up. I'm going to go watch that now. I hope you guys have a cool note. I'll be back with that.